Okay, good afternoon. I'll just introduce myself a bit more. My name is James Balloch. I head up one of the student administration teams within the college. One of my areas of expertise is campus registration and online enrolment. So the process of getting the applicant into the college to be a student. Now, I've just sent some packs around. There's a copy of the slides in there that I'm going to go through, and some of the literature and some of the information that we give out to students at this time. Please help yourself, look through it. There might be some duplication on information that you've got, and I'll apologise now, as you're probably all going to be over your weight luggage when you travel back home after this conference. Now, before we start the presentation, just to give you a little bit of the scope of the area that I'm looking at and what I'm going to be talking about. So we're going to be looking really around the time period of the process of an applicant confirming their offer through to them actually turning up to a lecture. And won't go into some details of areas along the way, but I'm more than happy to talk about them afterwards or later on this evening. I'm going to focus on a bit on data capture, a little bit on the registration processes King's has had before and after to where we are now, and touch on the student experience and what we've done to try and identify that and improve it over the last couple of years. And really look at, when I talk about that, I'll look at the applicant journey to coming up and being here, and also the King's journey of how we've got to that stage. So big disclaimer here that this is what we're doing with King's. Some of it might resonate with your own institutions, some of it might not. And there's no right or wrong way of doing this. This is just the way that we've approached with the resources, the time, and the history and structure of this particular institution. So, first question I asked myself was, why do we register students? And my initial answer was, well, we've always done it that way. And then actually looked into a few more details on that case. So part of it is a sort of compliance with a number of internal and external bodies. Part of it is sort of maintaining the entrance requirements, the quality of the programme of study, and also, you know, safeguarding the institutional reputation. And then we have, it's a logistical exercise. It's the easiest way for us to get a lot of information, such as IT accounts, such as induction information, to a large group of students in a relatively short space of time with the resource that this institution has available to you. And we use it as an opportunity to verify the applicant's information. I'm not sure if you've had discussions about the admissions process or the application or the admissions portal. Okay, you've got that to come, so some of that won't make quite sense, but what we'll do is we'll visually sort of confirm any qualifications that we need to do, and also verify the student's identification of their passport and national identity card documentation, depending where the student comes from. Now, the King's approach to this is, at this precise moment, really a four-stage process. We have the registration and really the setup of the IT account and access to the online enrolment task. We then move on to the completion of the online enrolment task, and that captures critical data about the individual student, contact information. It also captures key HESA compliance of questions that we need to ask to provide back to the government. And for any overseas students, we use it as an opportunity to capture their visa information and also confirm the student fees and also get them to sign up to the declaration so they're ready and fully running to abide to the college regulations. And then after that, they attend the campus registration session. They happen throughout the year, but mainly in September for our main intake across the 5 campuses that we have, but predominantly on 4 of them. And then finally, once they've done that, they'll attend their departmental induction programme, and that will lead them into actually attending the lectures, the core reason why they're here studying at King's. So the applicant journey to get there. Pretty straightforward. The lighter colour boxes are sort of the actions that the applicant has to take, and the darker ones are just some of the business processes that are tied in by the institution. So what we have is they'll confirm their offer. The admissions team will update that information, hold it on the system, and that will cause a series of processes that take place that will generate the online enrolment task, generate their IT credentials, and really firm up whether that student is actually coming or that applicant is actually coming. That information is released to the applicant, and then we can monitor and track how far they're progressing through that actual online enrolment task. So we know the students who potentially are not going to arrive because they've not engaged with the whole process, and we're able to actually interact with them beforehand. This can have the knock-on effect of actually dealing with any problems before the students turn up. It also can identify any students that are not coming, and then potentially what we can do is try and find out the reasons why, and is there anything we can do to actually bring them along, or also how we can help them through that process. Eventually they'll come to a registration session through all the guidance and information that's provided for, and this is all linked in stages to the student. I'll talk a little bit about student communication at the end, because it's one of the areas, as Gary alluded to in the last presentation, that is a little bit disjointed. We have a tendency to send out a lot of information from a number of different sources at the same time to all our applicants. The student then turns up, gets all the documentation that they need, their ID cards, and double checks their access, and then they're given a lot more information about their program, their induction and timetables, and actually start turning up and attending their lectures and studying and doing all the work that's meeting the personal tutors, etc. Now the college's journey to this process has been a little more challenging. We have 5 campuses and 9 schools on those campuses, and in 2008 I would class that as an isolated and incoherent approach. The best way to describe it, it worked, but it wasn't particularly pretty behind the scenes. The students would come in, they'd get registered, however there was lots of toing and froing. There was a very inconsistent experience that you'd have if you're a student at one campus to what there was at another, and we found that that was, you know, quite a concern with respect of growing student numbers that I'll talk about in a minute. And a lot of the process was basically loaded onto the end of the task. So we would post out information to the students, they would fill that form in, and then we had a very heavy reliance on our IT systems to sort of capture and print ID cards, issue their IT access, all within the space of about a week. So you had on average about 10,000 students back in 2008, 2009, coming in, doing this process at the same time across the campuses. So what we've done is we've looked at that whole thing, tried to give students more time to actually give us the information that we need, update their details, and take it forward from there. Now, with this, I say over-reliance on sort of IT systems has been quite critical. What I tried to do is just give you a map of London, show you where the campuses are. The idea of that is just to show they're very sort of geographically apart, and they very much were operating in isolation. There's also, I decided to put a little pirate ship on there, but you don't get many of them down the Thames, so don't worry about that one. The problem that we had was you'd often get that the IT systems, because they're all being used at the same time, is it would slow the process down. And we often had maybe queues not as bad as that, but you'd have a real issue with the student experience where they're actually finding it funny and sort of understanding that this is a queuing process, it's very slow. And if you think about this, if any of you came through Heathrow when you landed and you had to queue to get through passport control, it doesn't really set the best example and the level that we want to see of you coming to Russell Group institution at King's College London. So what we were really focused on is removing the queues from students. The idea was to get them through, show that King's is the professional institution, that very highly regarded, good reputation. The easiest way to destroy that straight away is to end up joining the back of one of them. So it's very, very key and very critical on our mind. So the 2008 registration process, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I'll explain it a little bit further. As I'm really trying to tell you, it was, you know, top end. It was when the students came here, that was the predominant where the work was done amongst the administration teams. Now, why did we decide to change? And you will have had some of these sort of comments and points of this alluded to earlier on. There's been a growth in student numbers, which one of the graphs next will show you from there. So we had to deal with the sort of instituted change on the grounds that, you know, if we carried on doing what we were doing, we couldn't physically accommodate the student numbers. The introduction of higher fees meant there was really a change in perception of what students were getting out of coming to King's College London, and we needed to redress that, if only to sort of reduce the queues, but to be able to provide a better service to their students at very critical times. A lot of these frontline services that I deal with tend to be sort of very peaks and troughs in their operations towards the beginning of the academic cycle per year. So what you'll find is a very high demand for confirmation of study letters, very high demand for ID cards in September, not so much of a demand in December. So you find that, again, the service requests and the information that you're being asked for is very high at the beginning of term, so you need to match that expectation to be able to deliver it when the student wants it the most. We've talked a little bit, I know you talked a little bit earlier about education as a business and the student as a customer. In this particular area of registering as a student, though it's considered an administrational task, it has to be done. It's very much about meeting or maximising the student's expectations by dealing with any questions that they have, getting the student through the process, getting their ID cards and getting them into the college to do what they're here to do. And that's realistically learn and be educated and really sort of embrace the fantastic environment that we have here at King's. We're also given the opportunity to do this by a bit of restructuring with the college administration. My team that I look after, we were an amalgam of 4 schools operations. So we had the opportunity to look at what we were doing across those 4 schools and provide a consistent approach to sort of student administration and registration activity. We're also really lucky to have a real development and an investment into the IT infrastructure that's allowed us to do some of the things that we want to do, such as increase our web presence, also to enable us to email IT credentials before the student gets here, and really some of the processes that the student doesn't see behind the scenes that makes that possible. As you can see, in the last sort of 4 years, there has been a steady and consistent growth of students. So that means that while we're registering students, we're having to do more with the same or reduced amount of resource. So we have to be a little bit more clever in how we manage that. And one of the things that we've looked to do is, really identifying and fast-tracking students through the whole registration process. Now, the initial developments, we looked at 2 areas. One was the online enrolment task, which was a move away from a paper-based system that we had in 2008. This was really moving some of the data capture burden onto the students in their own time to be able to capture that information and update it, and also to allow them to ask any questions prior to arrival. And this would mean that we'll be able to see certain stages through this sort of exercise, how a student was progressing, if they were having any problems from that perspective. It also gave us an opportunity to take some pressure off our IT systems by students uploading photographs so we could pre-print their ID cards, by dealing with any IT credentials queries or any changes of course that they had through this process before the student actually turned up. What you'll find, it meant we had enough time during the registration sessions to focus on students who had problems, who had issues from that perspective that needed to be resolved, and then students who had completed the task would have a very quick face-to-face verification, pick up their ID card, and then go off to do their departmental inductions. One of the critical things we found out when going through the exercise looking at campus registration was the use of student ambassadors. What we did is we found that we were employing a lot of additional staff to help out with the registration sessions. However, the questions that the students had to these staff, and even to people like me, were questions that I was unable or they were unable to answer. And that could be really simply, where's the nearest bus stop to get you to Waterloo? What is the best place to live? Where's the best place to get lunch? For a member of staff to a member of student, they can be very, very different things. So one of the things we started using a lot more student ambassadors in lovely pink t-shirts, all branded up with the King's logo, Welcome Ambassador, and with the subtle but big text on the back saying here to help. So the idea was, any sort of general social queries or generally anything about being a new student at King's, we directed the students to the student staff. The peer-to-peer interaction was fantastic and made a massive difference to the new students' experience and them coming through. They were able to get very, very easy, quick answers to information that maybe to me was very irrelevant, but to them was make or break on whether they're going to enjoy themselves in the first week. One of the things that we then expanded from that place was we do campus tours, we do local city tours to really give the new students a feel of the information. These are very different to the marketing ones that we do, and again we use the student ambassadors to deliver on that. What we're doing for next year is we're trying to see how much we can expand that and how much more we can use the student ambassadors from that perspective to really help aid this process. Now the comparison of where we were in 2008 to where we are now is there were a lot more processes involved. So the vision behind this screen, which looked a lot better when I wrote it to when I've had gone through it a few times, is the red stage is really everything that we're expecting from a student. The amber stage is then the interaction back with us to the green stage where the student is here and fully enrolled. So this was what I was looking at prior to 2009. The stage of where we've gone is we've reduced the number of points of contact. We've made it quicker and more simple for students to go through it. So we have a lot more red through to amber, a lot smaller, a lot more information for us to be able to deal with, and then we get down to the green. So there's a lot less stages for the student to go through, which means we can really maximise dealing with the problems that students have through this process. We've also looked at how we communicate this information to students. So we're looking at stages. We talk about confirming the offer, we talk about the online enrolment task, and then we talk about the campus registration sessions. So it's very distinct stages that when we talk to a student, say you are at stage 2, you are doing this, this is the next process that you go to. And the student turns up and then they interact with their programme and their lectures and study from there. We looked at rebranding the whole exercise as well, making it a lot more professional, and this is through the t-shirts that you've seen. There's some rather funky purple ones for college staff as well, to make it very evident that this is an exercise that was going on and that everyone's involved. For example, our lanyards are all branded up as well. I have examples of them if anyone wants to take any away. And really it was giving that feel of this is an activity that was taking place that everyone should get involved in. When you go to the examinations hall, when you go to graduations, they have that massive college feel. When you come to a marketing event here as well, it's very much branded as the college, and it's very much seen as you are participating in that event. Up until realistically last year, that mindset was not involved in campus registration. It is now, and we're looking to expand it to make it more of a celebration of the students arriving at King's. The New to King's website is one of the areas, amongst with all the branding that you've seen, is where we're standardising it across the college to give students a very similar experience. The campuses, are we having a campus tour at all? We are. Brilliant. You'll see when you go... Tour of this. Okay. All the King's campuses, all slightly different in their setup and feel, but they are King's. And one of the things we want to do is a student could go to any of those campuses. It's something in operations like the Compass are doing as well, is providing the same service in a different location. It's a it's all about building the mindset. You can go here, you can get that information. So what we had with this was, all the signage, all the branding, all the staffing uniforms is across the board. So it's very much seen as a college activity. The New to King's website is a central hub for departmental information. It's also for frequently asked questions and supporting the enrolment information that we have. So it's very much seen as a college activity. And again, it allows us the opportunity to send that same message out to all the students. And finally, just talking about where we're going to go with this, and the next stages are, there's about 3 or 4 that I just want to discuss. The first one is personalisation of the online enrolment task. Very much about putting critical information into it that makes it feel very much it's tailored to the individual. This can include fee status and tuition fee liability. It's about putting their departmental information in there, linking their enrolment time, so it's very individual. At the moment, once you get through the task as a student, it moves to a much more departmental and programme breakdown. We want to continue that personalisation that they have through the admissions portal and their individual offer through the enrolment task so they can see it. And there's quite a bit of work behind the scenes of building logic into the task to be able to do that. One of the things about data capture that we want to do is try and improve the quality of it. And some of that is through, again, logic-based systems that if a student puts an answer to a certain question, it automatically updates further down in the task to match what they're asking. And if there's any errors or something is inconsistent, it pops that up as an error message. So it gives the student the opportunity to try and amend it where and when through that process. HESA is the Higher Education Statistical Agency. What we have to do as an institution is provide core pieces of data back to them on an annual basis. And some of that core data is reliant on the student actually giving it to us. So 2 examples would be they are able to populate their highest qualification on entry, and also they have to provide a sample of their educational background before coming in to King's College London. So there's a very big drop-down menu of options which a student can select through to there. What I can do is I can pull off the listings and everything and circulate that around. It's something all UK institutions pretty much have to do to provide back to the government, and what you'll find is they'll use that information to chart student progress and history. I think one of the other speakers further down might go into more detail about our involvement with HESA, but I'm more than happy to take any questions or any discussion on it later from that perspective. Just looking at communications, just sort of updating what we deliver, how we integrate with the likes of Facebook and Twitter, so we can see if any students are having any problems, and how we can present information if they're not checking their emails. And one of the critical things that we really want to do is how, once we've given the student the enrolment task, giving them their timetable so they know what they're likely to be studying where they are, whether they can select modules online beforehand, and also giving them access to learning materials so they can start engaging with the programme prior to arrival. And part of that is one, you know, it will, I don't want to, well, I'm going to say it, seal the deal if they're a bit wavering about coming to King's, but also gives them a feel and understanding about what they're letting themselves in for and managing that expectation a little bit more with the students. And then for registration enhancements, I've talked about using student ambassadors, and we're trying to roll them out and use them more because they're a really valued asset that we have at the college. Improving the sort of signage that we use, it's a step forward from where we are now. And expanding sort of the opportunity for students to be offered pre-printed letters that are enabled for confirmation of study, enable them to open bank accounts, and how we can do that and be more intuitive and interactive with the student prior to arrival. So when they come here, we're able to give them very quickly what they want and then allow them to get on with what they're here to do in that study. And just to summarise, we've moved to an online registration process that ties in line with the online application process that we have. So the idea is a very intuitive feel that they're working with our college systems, and it's just bringing them through the process until they physically arrive. We're also managing and consistently looking at how we're dealing with queries, so we give the same and right answer to each student time and time again. And then we're looking at how our resources on the day can be allocated more efficiently, how we can deal with the queries, and how we can get the students through as quickly as possible into their actual lectures and their departmental inductions. The idea of my view of what I deem my administration service that I provide to students is you don't see us, we just keep you moving along as long as you can till you finish your degree from that perspective. We like to be the silent face of the college with regards to student, which sounds really odd from that perspective, but the idea is if a student doesn't see us, brilliant, as long as they go through their process and do everything they need to do, and we can provide that support service through there, then as far as I'm concerned, my team and I have done our jobs particularly well.